Good morning, Broncos fans. As we are getting the live streams connected here, I'd just like to say to those that are already on, welcome to the show. And if you are here in the Mountain Time Zone like I am, or if you're watching from anywhere around the world, you are likely a Broncos fan. And we are connected with that fandom. So thank you for joining the show. I'm your host, Thomas Hall, bringing you Legends of Mile High, which is a podcast that blends Denver Broncos current events with a historical perspective. And the ultimate goal is to keep the storied history of the franchise alive, even in the minds of the most recent of fans. And I would just like to say that we usually end the show with a Mile High legend, but we're not going to do that today, unfortunately. During my travels, I didn't have time to put together a nice story, but next week you don't want to miss it because I'm going to be talking about Gene Mingo, a great story, something you don't want to miss, and so that Mile High Legend will return next week with triumphant fashion. So please, if you get a chance, hit the like button, and so you can like the show, subscribe to Mile High Huddle YouTube, and also, tell your friends and family. We more people we get on this show, the more we can talk about history, the more we can keep it alive in many fans. Michael coming in this morning. Thank you so much. Great supporter of the show. Good morning, Thomas Hall and Legends of Mile High. Let's ride and go Broncos. Yeah, thank you for that, Michael. I appreciate that. Appreciate your support of this show and all the other shows that Mile High Huddle puts out there. They're great perspectives. All have a little bit different perspective. So it's great to have you on this morning. So today we're going to do a little tribute to Marlin Briscoe. Unfortunately, he passed away this week. So Broncos. I mean, I would say he's an NFL legend more than just a Broncos legend. And after that, we're going to discuss players who were in a different era, who maybe were decent players, good players, who could be really great in today's era. And a couple weeks ago, I asked everyone that listens to the show to bring their ideas. So I look forward to seeing all of those players that you put into the chat, and we'll discuss each and every one of them. And like I said, I have 4 of my own. So we'll get to that, and hopefully some of those players that you put in the chat will be those players, so I don't have to bring them up myself. Dom Amarillo, good morning, Thomas Scott and Broncos Country, Denver Broncos for life. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the show. I appreciate you coming in from Facebook. And also appreciate Scott being behind the scenes. He's always here taking care of the show for me, so I don't have to, which is great. So thank you very much. So first, let's just talk a little bit about Marlin Briscoe. He passed away this week. He only played 1 season in Denver, so that he's not. When you think about Denver, you know 1 season. What's the big deal? But he carries a significant impact in that 1 season. I mean, he really created history by becoming the first African American quarterback to start in the modern NFL or AFL. And he wasn't a prototypical sized quarterback. He was 5'11", 178 pounds, but it really didn't matter. I mean, he when he got his chance to start, he threw 14 touchdowns in 5 games in 1968. And that's pretty good production for someone who wasn't going into the season as the starter or even the first one to come off the bench. He was actually 3rd string, but the second guy off the bench was and having a rough season, so they called Briscoe's name. And he also, during that season, threw for 335 yards in a game, and as a rookie against the Buffalo Bills. That was a Broncos rookie record, and that stood until John Elway broke it in 1983. So that's a pretty good quarterbacking for a rookie who wasn't even planning on playing much that year. So he left the Broncos after that season, went to the Buffalo Bills, who he threw that 335 yards against, and they converted him to a wide receiver. And he also won 2 Super Bowls as a wide receiver with the Miami Dolphins. So a testament to his longevity. He played wide receiver for several years. Was a pretty good wide receiver, but not just that. He also had incredible athleticism, and that being able to convert to a wide receiver kind of shows that. And he received the nickname as the Magician in college because of his ability to not only pass the ball but to run and escape when he was in the pocket uh, and getting rushed and hurried. So he that kind of leads me to believe that he played in the wrong era. Really, he he could have been in today's era something like someone like Kyler Murray, not the prototypical size of a quarterback, but very athletic. Could throw the ball, and so could Marlin Briscoe. So, which kind of leads me into what we're going to talk about next. But I just want to just take that moment to think about Marlin Briscoe and what he meant to not only the Broncos but to the NFL, making history and actually playing quite some time in the NFL and making 1 Pro Bowl. So, thank you to his contributions to NFL history. So next, let's see if we can get some people in the chat talking about players from a different era who they believe could play today and be even a better player. And I'll start off with my first one, and that's Rulon Jones. Now, Rulon Jones was the prototypical edge rusher. He would be perfect for today's era. 6'5", 260 pounds, really long arms, had some great length, but he was also really good off the edge. He had some good bend. He could get to the quarterback pretty quickly. Those are all key elements that that NFL scouts are looking for when it comes to edge rushers in today's NFL. And he was a really good pass rusher back then. He played in he got his first year in the season was 1981, and he played 9 years. The reason why I think he'd be better in today's game than he was back then, even though he had 73 and a half sacks in 9 seasons, which was incredible. Had a couple All Pros, one first team All Pro, one second team All Pro. I mean, he was a really solid player back then, but in today's game, it's a pass happy league. Back then, it was still, everything was kind of predicated on a solid running game, and his body just kind of wore down with that beating that he took, stopping the run. And even towards the end of his career, he would only come in on passing downs. He split time with Andre Townsend because his body was just kind of worn out. He had a couple seasons where he was injured, but in today's NFL, he wouldn't have to do that. He would be coming off the edge, most likely in a 4-3 defensive end position or stand up outside linebacker. But back then he was on the defensive line playing defensive end in a 3-4. So he was having to hold up against those offensive tackles and guards every head to head every game day. So today I think he would have played longer, probably would have had close to over 100 sacks in today's game, and he may have even been a candidate for the Hall of Fame if he was playing today. So that's mine. Anybody have any other players that they think would be great in today's game from a different era? Throw it in the chat. And before that, I just want to remind everybody to, again, like the show, like and subscribe to NFL or to Mile High Huddle YouTube. There's a lot of great shows out there. I jumped on with Mile High Insiders on Wednesday night. It was an incredible time. Everybody has a great perspective, so don't forget to check all of those others out. So we got Lawrence. Elias Eli Bernal. Thank you for jumping with Al Wilson. Absolutely, I love Al Wilson, man. His career was cut short, unfortunately. He had that neck injury, but he's one of the best inside linebackers in Broncos history. I rank him up there and easily the top top 3, 4 of all time as inside linebacker. You got Randy Gradishar, Mecklenburg, Wilson. One that people don't remember that I talk about a lot is Michael Brooks, and people don't remember him because he really only had 4 great years with the Broncos, but you're not going to find anyone outside of Randy Gradishar that had more tackles in that 4-year period. So yeah, Al Wilson is one that I think he was definitely built for playing against the run. I don't know how he would hold up with all the passing that goes on this today's game. Being able to cover running backs and tight ends are super athletic, but he had great athleticism, smart, instinctive. He probably would have been just fine in today's era. Also, we got Dom coming back in with Ian Gold and DJ Williams. Well, Ian Gold, that's interesting that you said, because Ian Gold was my one of my choices because of his ability back then to play against the pass. Would fit right in today's game. He's a small linebacker, played weak side outside linebacker for the Broncos and one season for the Tampa Bay Bucks. He was an incredible had incredible speed really for the linebacker position. Ran a 4.5 40 and at the combine. He's only 220 pounds, but he could play. He was a good tackler. Played on special teams a little bit. I think he would fit right in today's game. I think you hit it spot on with Ian Gold. I think he played in the wrong era. Today's game, he could have even played a little drop back into coverage as a safety if he wanted to. He was that good. I mean, he had, I believe, 30 passes defensed in his time, and when he really only started for about 7 years, if you include the Tampa Bay Bucks. So it's a pretty good stat line for a linebacker in that day and age. And DJ Williams wasn't on my list, but that's something I didn't think about. Lawrence Rivera coming in. Thank you. I love seeing you on the show. This is I think you're here every morning. I appreciate it. Rod Smith would take over the league. Yeah, Rod Smith. I don't know how much more he could have done, man. He should be a Hall of Famer. In my mind, he has the credentials to be a Hall of Famer. And today's league, he would have been great. But you think about it, and he didn't get his start until 95, really, and that was just one game. He was a undrafted rookie. If he'd have started, came in the league as a 3rd or 4th round draft choice, he would have started, considerably earlier and started accumulating stats. He would have been easily in the top 10, maybe even close to the top 5 had he been drafted. So Rod Smith is a Hall of Famer. He's gets knocked because he doesn't have the career stats of some of the other folks. But there was a 2-year period where he was arguably the best wide receiver in the league back then, and that's a big compliment when you consider that there was also Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, the Bruce and Torrey Holt, all these guys in their prime, and Rod Smith in a run first offense was arguably the best receiver in the league in the early 2000s. So Rod Smith's a good one, but I don't know how much more he could do. Andre, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to pronounce your last name, but I appreciate the super chat coming in. Thank you so much. This is the first time I've seen you on the show. I appreciate you joining. Loving the show, Thomas. Rest in peace, Marlon. He's a legend. Absolutely. NFL legend. He made history. So that's why I wanted to take the time to appreciate what he did today. And I appreciate you for jumping in here with the super chat. It's the history. Most people probably don't know who Marlin Briscoe is, but they should, because he's not just a Mile High legend. He's an NFL legend. And for what he was able to do, breaking barriers and whatnot. So thank you for that, Chad. I really appreciate it. And Peter Middleton's also talking about Briscoe. It's very cool to know that he was a Bronco, proud to support this organization. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his chance came at quarterback back then, which was probably, I would say, wasn't supposed to happen. Nobody really wanted him to play quarterback. He had to negotiate that he was going to be converted to a defensive back, I believe, early in his career with the Broncos, but he negotiated to play quarterback. Third stringer got his chance, and when he did, he took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and played really well for his situation. So um, I think yeah, I think we forget about some of these players that they did something great for a year or two, and then something happened. They moved to different positions, but we got to remember those folks, especially the Mile High legends, but NFL legends as well. So I appreciate that. Michael's coming in with Ray Crockett. I like Ray Crockett too. I think he was a really good player. Also, even back then, for the two Super Bowl runs, I don't. I think he'd probably still be play a good player in this day and age as well. Um, he was a key to those Super Bowl runs. I mean, he was definitely locked down receivers quite well. Those in '97 and '98, yeah, key moments in his career. So thank you very much for that. My the second number two. I know I talked about Ian Gold, but my number two player who I think would have been incredible in today's game goes way back. Riley Odoms. Riley Odoms was a tight end when tight ends weren't asked to catch passes very often. They were back then when you were a tight end, you were an extra blocker most of the time, but his statistics are quite amazing, really, for a tight end. Um, for a tight end in that era. He could block, he was athletic, and he could stretch the middle of the field. They just, his stats don't show it because he just didn't get the opportunity that the tight ends get today. And he had the requisite size to play tight end. So he would be one of those. I'm not going to say he's as good as Gronkowski, but he would be in that mold, a big, physical blocker and receiver type. And when you watch those big tight ends, they just kind of engulf the football when it's coming to them. And Riley Odoms definitely played in the wrong era, because if he was in today's game, he would have incredible stat numbers. He would be considered for the Hall of Fame. I actually think he still should be considered for the Hall of Fame, since there's very few tight ends that had better numbers than him back in that era. And also consider that, with those stats, that they were mostly doing the blocking and not getting out there as a pass catcher very often. Lawrence coming back in. How much does the league rules affect those older guys playing, and how they would do now? No, now I know a lot would probably be ejected. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're speculating that they're going to be able to play by by the rules of today, and also by using the same training techniques that the NFL players have the privilege of having today. So, when you look back at some of these players from yesteryear, you have to consider that they're going to be training just like the people that train today. They're going to be faster. They're probably going to be, more physically fit from a athletic standpoint, more muscular. But yeah, a lot of those players back then got away with a lot of stuff. I mean, it was still almost the modern era when they started flagging people for face masks. Back in the early years, when they started putting the face masks on the helmet, you could grab them and take people down by the face mask. So I mean, there was definitely injury concerns. If they still had those rules today with the athleticism and speed and size of some of these players, I mean, I think there'd be so many injuries, and it would be pretty bad. So the rules though also help. Not only the rules, but also the medical advances help prolong people's career. I mean, back in the '80s and '90s, early '90s, ACL tear was almost a death sentence for most players. Their career is, I mean, their career death sentence, not reality. But so the medical advances too would keep these players in the league longer. So I'm looking at players when I talk about it would they fit in today's game? Especially if they had today's advances, and that's where I'm coming from. But yeah, if they tried to play like back then, and a lot of them had to, like Conrad Dobler was a dirty player, and I think he would be, he'd get ejected probably for some of his play. But there was some dirty play back then. Dale Fleming, thank you for coming in again. Sorry I'm late. Morning, Thomas Scott and Broncos country. I appreciate you, Dale. Thank you for coming in. I know you're going to have some players that you can remember from yesteryear that could play today. So and be actually much better than they were back then. And I mean, I know that people can say John Elway, but I mean he'd be great in any era. He's a Hall of Famer. EJ, thank you for coming in. I was wondering if I'd see you this morning. Thank you very much. Good morning, Thomas and Broncos country. Thank you for keeping those mile-high legends alive, like Marlin Briscoe. You're welcome. I really appreciate that. FC Donnelly, the obvious old guy, would be great to his John Elway. Yeah, I mean, John Elway's a Hall of Famer. He was great back then. He would be, stats would be obliterated if he was playing today. I mean, people always talk about Pat Mahomes and what he can do. Well, John Elway was doing that way before Pat Mahomes, and doing it in an era where they weren't protected, and they were, it was a offense that was designed for run first. And when he was able to have a more innovative mind, you could see his statistics increased when Mike Shanahan started as the head coach. So it was, Elway would be incredible in any era for sure. But today, I mean, his stats would have been incredible. So Colby Collier, thank you for coming in. Facebook stars, appreciate that. Appreciate your support for the show. Again, let's keep talking about these players who would have been great in today's game. Dale coming back in. Did I miss Gradishar being mentioned? Not yet. So far, it's been Riley Odoms. It's been Rulon Jones. Those are my two picks. Ian Gold was mentioned. DJ Williams, Rod Smith. Gradishar, absolutely. I mean, the difference with today's game, with the middle linebackers or inside linebackers were the heart of the defense in the early part, even clear up into almost the 2000s. But today's game, it's kind of changed. It's the inside linebacker's role is being diminished, but he still would be incredible. Incredible tackler. And I think you may have pointed out, or somebody did, talking about this in the comment section in YouTube, that his stats would have been counted. So there wouldn't be any argument about how many tackles he actually had. And that unfortunately is what had kind of kept him out of the Hall of Fame for so long, is the late, great Paul Zimmerman, Dr. Z, brought into question his stat line during Hall of Fame discussions. And he made people doubt that he was as good as he was. But I mean, stats aside, just watch the games. He made tackle after tackle after tackle. Maybe back then, the person logging the stats fudged it a little bit, but they took pride in their work back then. They wanted to have it correct. So I mean, I don't see what the problem is, but I think this is his year. He's getting into the Hall of Fame. They're going to elect 3 senior candidates this year. I think his name's going to be called, which is going to be incredible for him and for the Denver Broncos. He's been the biggest snub that I can think of for the Hall of Fame, and in a long time. There's a few pretty big snubs, but his name is one of the top on the list for sure. Now I'll go. EJ coming in. Floyd Little will be great today's game. Well, yeah, I mean that's another one that he's a Hall of Famer. He was great back then, incredible. But yeah, he probably would be a good one for today's game. He was able to catch passes out of the backfield too, which was an added element even for back then. So yeah, Floyd Little, he's great though. He'd be great in any era. An incredible story, and what he did. He's nicknamed the franchise for a reason. I mean, really, he saved the Broncos franchise. The first round draft choice really to sign with the Broncos. They drafted several future Hall of Famers, including Merlin Olsen, Butkus back then, but they went on to play with the NFL instead of the AFL back then. So really, Floyd Little saved the franchise. So he's a Broncos legend, NFL legend, and I think he'd be pretty good in any era. But yeah, Hall of Famer. So he was great back then for sure. So um, my last one that I want to talk about is someone who people probably wouldn't expect, but that's Steve Sewell. Now, Steve Sewell was not an incredible running back. He came out of Oklahoma and with great potential, but he was an undersized running back, small. I mean, he was 210 pounds. I guess he looked smaller, but he was not a great running back as far as rushing the ball back then, but he was great out of the backfield catching passes. And in fact, if you watch the drive, I mean, Elway was the star of that, obviously, but Sewell was huge. He had, I believe, almost 40% of the yards of those 98 yards to get them in position to tie up the game. So he was incredible. But yeah, he's one of those guys who, I mean, he didn't have very many yards rushing, but if he could come in today's game, be that change of pace type back, third down back, catching passes out of the backfield, I think he would have incredible stat line. Even so, an incredible stat line in the rushing side of the ball as well, being that change of pace back when you have someone that comes in and wears the defense down, and then you have a slasher like him that was pretty quick. I think he'd be a really, really solid player. Probably would have earned some, maybe a Pro Bowl or two in today's game, but someone who's kind of forgotten, but don't forget him. He was key in the drive. So go back and watch the drive. It is on YouTube. It's gives me chills every time I watch it. So go back, check it out, and watch specifically Steve Sewell. Great contributions on the drive. Michael coming back in. Thank you again. Terrell Davis would still have had a great career if he didn't suffer a major knee injury in the NFL. Hall of Famer Terrell Davis. Yeah, Terrell Davis. So the thing about Terrell Davis, he was a great running back, obviously. But what made him great is it was the perfect marriage between him and that zone blocking scheme. He had incredible vision, and I've said this before. He's one of the running backs I point to as probably the best vision in the NFL outside of maybe O.J. Simpson as a running back. Terrell Davis going into any other type of running scheme may not have been as good. He would have been a decent running back, I think, but being in the zone blocking scheme would have been. I mean, that's what made him so great. He fit perfectly into that scheme, and other running backs had success, but none like Terrell Davis in that scheme for the Broncos. I mean, 2,000-yard season, I've argued was the best of any 2,000-yard running back season, because not only did he run for over 2,000 yards, his touchdown numbers were far better than others, and he only fumbled 2 times that entire season. You go back and you watch, you look at Eric Dickerson's 2,000-yard season, not nearly the amount of touchdowns, and I think he fumbled like 14 times that year. So what Terrell Davis did was incredible. Yeah, I think he'd be great today if he was able to be in the zone blocking scheme. I know that there's some rules that have kind of altered that scheme a little bit, not quite as effective as it was back then. But yeah, Terrell Davis, Hall of Famer. I don't know how much better you can get. It was perfect timing for him coming into the league when he did. So, um, that's all my 4 I have. We have some great discussion here. I had Rulon Jones, Ian Gold, and Riley Odoms and Steve Sewell. So I urge you guys to go back and just check them out. Watch a little bit of the 80s football games and see Rulon Jones, how he was able to play. It was incredible. And EJ coming in with Carl Mecklenburg, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. And if you haven't watched it, go back and watch that interview with Carl Mecklenburg. His insight is incredible. And one of the things that that still blows my mind when I think about it, he said he was able to clean and jerk over 450 pounds when he was playing. 6'4", 240 pounds to be able to do that. I mean, incredible strength. The U.S. record is like 490 pounds for his what his weight class would be. So it's incredible to think about just how strong Carl Mecklenburg was. But yeah, he would be great today in today's NFL. He's a Hall of Famer in my book. He is definitely a Hall of Famer in my book. I think he gets in eventually. I mean, they put Sam Mills in recently. They're putting him in this year. Carl Mecklenburg had a way better career than he did in as an inside linebacker, but his ability to seamlessly play all front seven positions would be a value in today's game because they value that versatility. But by his own words, he said he would never even make the team if he was playing in today's game because he wasn't fast. He in the rules of today's game, even in practice, they hardly ever tackle. So he wouldn't have made that impression as a 12th round draft choice. But if he had gotten his shot, yeah, he probably could have played in today's game. I mean, he would be he was running the 40 about as fast as Josie Jewell did. Better instincts, obviously, and the versatility would have put him in the game in my book. But he would argue that he wouldn't even make the team if he was in today's game. But I think he would have. I think his heart and his ability and his intelligence would have, and his versatility would have got him on the field somehow. So, but yeah, but thank you for Mecklenburg, EJ. He's obviously one of my favorites of all time, and that's why I had him on the show. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the chat. If we got a few others that may be popping up in here, I think we've hit on pretty much all of them that I could think of. I know I saw Clinton Portis in there. Portis was a great player. He's actually borderline Hall of Famer in my book. Um, his first two seasons with the Broncos were incredible. I mean, I would say his seasons are ranked behind TD's two great seasons and Otis Armstrong's one season in '74 was incredible, and then you got Clinton Portis's two seasons, incredible player. But he also was able to bring in Champ Bailey, who obviously was a Hall of Famer and a legend in Broncos country. Went to the Hall of Fame first ballot, and that is incredible. So he was in that trade. But yeah, I think Clint Portis is a borderline Hall of Famer with his career stats. I don't know if he'll get in, but he's definitely gets some Hall of Fame love every year with nominations. So. Dale Fleming, Tom Jackson. Absolutely. Tom Jackson was an incredible linebacker versus the pass. I believe he had 20 interceptions. And that's a pretty good number for a linebacker back then. He's another one who is borderline Hall of Famer, and you can make an argument for him being on that Orange Crush defense. One of the stars. I mean, you got Randy Gradishar, you've got Louis Wright, probably the first number 1 and 2, and then Tom Jackson comes in there somewhere around top 5 on that defense. So an incredible player, and he's a borderline Hall of Famer. But today's game, if he had the same training and everything, he probably could be a solid inside linebacker or weak side outside linebacker. Elias is coming in with Tom freaking Nalen. Tom Nalen, he is one of my favorites. I argue about his Hall of Fame candidacy all the time. Nalen gets zero love from the Hall of Fame for some reason, and I don't know why. He can be argued as being one of the greatest centers of all time. He played in a small market, even though the Broncos were going to the Super Bowl. He just didn't get the recognition. I think he got robbed of another All-Pro first team in 1998 for what he did to get Terrell Davis to 2,000 yards. They gave it to Dermody Dawson that year on name recognition alone. That Pittsburgh Steelers team was not very good. Their running game was pretty inept, and their offense was terrible that year. And yeah, maybe he had a great individual performance, but this is a team game, and he got that All-Pro. And if Tom Nalen had got that All-Pro in 1998, you would see a different awards section for Tom Nalen for his career. He probably would have ended up with 5 first-team All-Pros if you really boil it down. Because if he'd have got that early one, he would have got another one much sooner. So Tom Nalen is a Hall of Famer, arguably one of the best centers of all time, and he again, it was a perfect scheme for him to play in. I don't know if he could play as well in today's era. He was a very light center. I know he was listed at 286, but some people would talk about seeing him in person and thinking he was around 275, playing in an era when 275 was extremely light for an offensive lineman and even a center. So his ability in that zone blocking scheme that Alex Gibb designed and Shanahan used was it was another perfect marriage, just like Terrell Davis. But yeah, he's a Hall of Famer in my book. He should be already in. And my countdown to the Broncos, who should be in the Hall of Fame, is sitting around number 8 right now, I believe. If you go to Mile High Huddle, check it out. But Tom Nalen will check in pretty high on that list. So wait for that to come out. So thank you very much for that. Tom Nalen, one of my favorites. So I love the discussion. Thank you very much. This is one of those times in the year when there's not a whole lot of news going on. So I appreciate people jumping in here to the chat, talking about older players, keeping them alive. I really appreciate it. It's great to reminisce about those other players, especially when there's not a lot of news going on. So I appreciate everybody coming in today. Don't forget to check out some of the other Mile High Huddle podcasts, and also go check out some of the content. We've got some good content coming out, written content on the milehighhuddle.com site. And again, go look for some of my countdown to the Hall of Fame for Broncos, people that should be in that aren't, and check it out as we continue to count that down. So I'm going to wrap up the show. I'm having a lot of fun, but again, I need to jump off. So the show's around 30 to 40 minutes. Check in next week, though, for sure. There's going to be more content. I'm hoping to have another guest or two on before training camp starts. Probably people who you won't expect, but they'll be fun for sure. And next week, Mile High Legend. None today. Sorry about that. The travel. Michael, thank you. Great show today. Thomas Hall and Legends of Mile High. Let's ride and go Broncos. Thank you, Michael. Coming in Facebook. Appreciate it. Everybody appreciates your support of the show. So next week, tune in. I'm going to tell the Mile High legend. It's going to be about Gene Mingo. It's a very, I would say it's an incredible kind of heartfelt story. People don't know that people don't really know about. So tune in next week. And again, thank you so much for joining the show, and appreciate everybody's support. And next week we'll get back to the regular format, and hopefully after that have a guest or two on. So thank you very much. And let's keep supporting Broncos country. Have a great one.